My girlfriend was mute, and I married her against all the pressure from the outside world. In the 3rd year of our marriage, I heard her voice for the first time. Surrounded by a fawning circle of friends, Rose tilted her head back, her face a mask of smug disdain. If that dead girl hadn't also been a mute, why would I have bothered pretending for all these years? I was standing at the threshold of the private room, my feet suddenly rooted to the floor. To be honest, I had never heard Rose's voice before. Logically, I shouldn't have been able to recognize it. But the words that tumbled from her lips, that mute was also deaf, left me utterly stunned. How could Rose possibly know that? Before I could process the thought, a drunken stranger stumbled into me from behind, pushing me forward and into the room. Rose was the center of attention, sitting amongst a crowd of people. Her head snapped in my direction at the commotion. The moment she saw me, her eyes lit up. She began to move her hands, her fingers gracefully forming the words in sign language. "You're here." She walked over, took my hand, and led me to a seat, showing me off to her friends. "Look, isn't my husband handsome?" I recognized the faces in the room from pictures on Rose's phone. They were her closest friends, and they all knew sign language. They all smiled at me. "Handsome," they chorused. "Absolutely gorgeous." The room was filled with boisterous laughter and chatter. I sat to the side, silently nursing my drink, a storm brewing inside me. For the rest of the evening, Rose didn't utter another word. It was as if the sentence I'd overheard was nothing more than a hallucination, a phantom whisper in the noisy room. After several rounds of drinks, Rose helped me to my feet. We said our goodbyes, and she guided me into the back seat of the car before getting behind the wheel. I sat motionless, my body heavy with alcohol, but my mind was a sliver of sharp, cold sobriety. I don't know how long we drove, but I could feel Rose's eyes on me in the rearview mirror, checking on me periodically. Finally, just as I estimated we were nearing home, her phone rang. She answered it immediately, her voice a low, eager whisper. "Are you coming over tonight? Is your husband not home?" A man's voice on the other end joked, a familiar tone that made my blood run cold. Rose let out a short, cold laugh. "He's a one-drink wonder. You think I don't know him? He's completely passed out. Stop wasting time. Are you coming or not?" The man on the other end readily agreed, and Rose hung up, humming a cheerful tune. When we got home, Rose directed the housekeeper to carry me into the bedroom, then dismissed all the servants for the night. While she was in the bathroom, humming and showering, I sat up in bed. I glanced at the clock. It was just past midnight. I got out of bed and knocked on the bathroom door. The humming stopped instantly. I pushed the door open. Rose, flustered, clutched a towel to her body, her eyes wide. "Rose," I said, my voice steady. "I thought I heard someone singing. Was that you?" Her eyes widened further in feigned shock as she shook her head, pointing a frantic finger at her phone. "How could that be me? I can't speak." My gaze fell on the phone's dark, blank screen, but I didn't call out her lie. Just then, the doorbell rang. A flash of panic crossed Rose's face. I moved past her, striding out of the bedroom. I opened the front door and froze. The man standing there was smoking a cigarette. He looked just as surprised to see me, before a slow, mocking smile spread across his face. "Long time no see," he said. "Brother." I remained silent, my body a solid wall in the doorway, with no intention of letting him pass. Julian's smirk widened. His gaze flickered over my shoulder, and he waved. "This must be my sister-in-law, right?" I turned. Rose had quickly thrown on a robe and was forcing a smile, her hands moving to ask me in sign. "Who is this?" Watching her pretend not to know Julian was almost comical. Julian let out a low whistle, his posture reeking of the same old arrogance. "Hey, Ethan. I've got to say, you have a thing for damaged goods, don't you?" The last one couldn't talk, and this one's the same. Crack. My fist connected with his jaw. The blow was so sudden that Julian stumbled backward, falling to the ground. He wiped a smear of blood from his lip, a defiant grin plastered on his face. I grabbed him by the collar, hauling him up to face me. My other fist was raised, ready to strike again, when Rose wrapped her arms tightly around me from behind. Her eyes were red-rimmed as she stepped between us, her hands flying in a flurry of signs. "It's okay, Ethan. Don't fight because of me." My rage subsided just enough for me to stand my ground, my fists still clenched. Julian spat a bloody wad onto the pavement. His eyes darted between the two of us before he let out a cold laugh and walked away. Back inside, Rose brought out the first aid kit to clean the cuts on my knuckles. I watched her silently, my head bowed, as a bitter feeling spread through my chest. A long time ago, whenever Julian and I fought, there was someone else who would tend to my wounds just like this. Lila would always have tears welling in her red eyes, her mouth opening as if to speak, but no sound would come out. Sometimes, angry at my recklessness, she would press down hard on my scrapes while disinfecting them. Seeing me wince in pain, she would let out a soft, breathy laugh. I would laugh with her, looking into her eyes and promising, "Lila, I won't let that bastard hurt you again." And I always kept that promise. Until the day she died. Rose's gentle shake on my arm pulled me from the depths of my memory. "What are you thinking about?" she signed, her expression a mask of concern. "I don't know him. I have no idea why he showed up here. Are you okay, Ethan?" Her frantic signing seemed so genuine. I rubbed my temples and looked up at her, my face calm. I didn't answer her question. Instead, I asked one of my own. "I've never asked you this. How did you become mute?" The question hung in the air. The color drained from Rose's face, but she managed a strained smile. "I was born this way," she signed. "There's very little chance of it ever being cured." With that, she took the first aid kit and disappeared into the bedroom, clearly unwilling to continue the conversation. I didn't follow. I turned and went into the guest room. I lay awake all night, staring at the ceiling as memories played on a loop in my mind. My phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number, but the familiar, taunting tone was unmistakably Julian's. "Ethan, I can't believe you're still so hung up on my sister. You even found yourself a replacement. Don't you want to know why my dear sister decided to jump off a building? I can tell you. All you have to do is let me have your wife for a couple of days." When I didn't reply, 2 more messages came through. "I've already had a taste of my sister. What's the harm in letting me try your wife?" That one sentence was all it took. In a blind rage, I hurled my phone against the wall. It shattered, the screen spiderwebbing into a dozen pieces. My heart felt like it had shattered right along with it, the pain so sharp it was hard to breathe. The one memory I tried so desperately to bury was being dug up and mocked by Julian. That bastard. The next morning, Rose acted as if nothing had happened, gently calling me for breakfast. I glanced at the spread on the table without stopping, grabbing my briefcase on my way to the door. "A kiss goodbye, darling," Rose signed, her eyes full of expectation. I hesitated, a chasm now stretching between us. I shook my head, muttering about an early meeting, and left in a hurry. At the office, I pulled up the live feed from the security cameras at home. The footage showed that moments after I left, Rose furiously swept the entire breakfast off the table. Then, she pulled out her phone and called Julian. "What the hell was wrong with you last night? Why did you have to bring up that dead girl? We could have just pretended nothing happened. He never would have suspected us. But you had to bring her up, and now he won't even touch me." Julian's low chuckle crackled through the phone speaker. It was the same sickening laugh I remembered from that rainy night when he forced Lila to call me. "So just tell him the truth," Julian said, his casual tone infuriating Rose even more. "Tell him what?" she shrieked. "I just got married. I haven't gotten anything out of this yet. I'm warning you, don't you dare mention that dead girl to him again. What if he starts missing her for real and decides to divorce me?" Hearing Rose refer to Lila as that dead girl over and over was like 1,000 tiny needles pricking at my heart. From their conversation, it was clear they had known about Lila all along. Julian's next words confirmed my suspicions. "Rose, you need to understand your place. You only got him because you're standing in Lila's shadow. What are you pretending for? Did you really think you could replace her in his heart? You're not worthy." Rose's face was a thundercloud, but she couldn't say a word. She slammed the phone down and began to tear through the house, smashing things and screaming in fury. I turned off the monitor, a strange sense of calm washing over me. So, Julian and Rose weren't exactly partners. They were just 2 vultures circling the same prize, brought together by greed. My money. My gaze drifted to the armchair by the window, where a lone teddy bear sat. A wave of sorrow crashed over me. "Lila, I'm so sorry. Julian used you when you were alive. And now, even in death, they're still using you. I think I made a terrible mistake. When Rose appeared in my life, feigning muteness to win my sympathy, I shouldn't have fallen for it. I shouldn't have tried to give her all the kindness I never had the chance to give you. I was wrong, Lila." With my mind made up, I called my lawyer and had him draw up divorce papers. Then I drove home. The house was still in disarray. Rose was clearly not expecting me back so soon. She froze when she saw me, then quickly tried to plaster on a smile and explain. I said nothing. I walked through the wreckage, sat on the sofa, and placed the divorce papers on the table. I looked up at her, my voice flat. I know you're not mute. I know you can speak. And I know about you and Julian. But I don't want to fight about it. I don't want to drag Lila's name through the mud with you too. Let's get a divorce. We can pretend none of this ever happened. Rose stared at me, disbelief warring with panic on her face. Tears began to stream down her cheeks. She rushed forward, grabbing my arm. No, I don't want a divorce, she cried. I love you, Ethan. I married you because I love you. I know you have a ghost in your heart, a mute girl you can't forget. But you have to believe me, I wasn't pretending. I really was mute. I was just recently cured. Please, you have to believe me. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. The sheer audacity of her, treating me like a fool, filled me with a disgust so profound it was almost choking. I shook her hand off, my voice cold and sharp. Sign the papers, Rose. Don't make me hate you more than I already do. My resolve seemed to snap something in her. The crying stopped. She covered her face and began to laugh, a shrill, unhinged sound that grew louder and louder. When she looked at me again, her eyes held a wild, manic gleam. Ethan, do you know why Lila died? It was because of you. If it wasn't for you, she wouldn't be dead. You're the one who killed her. Lila, my high school classmate. Before I set foot on a university campus, my world was confined to the cheapest housing in the old part of town. Lila, my neighbor. From our first year of high school, the other kids had a whole roster of names for us. Jinx, Bad Omen, Pauper, Mute. The taunts were relentless. At first, Lila would get upset, hurt that no one would talk to her, or by the cruelty of the nicknames. But I was different. I knew from a young age that this life wasn't my destiny. My only way out was to get into a good university and leave this place forever. After I became friends with Lila, I tried to instill the same drive in her. I told her, they all think we're easy targets, but we'll be the ones to prove them wrong. I told her, we have nothing now, so anything we say or do is just a joke to them. Only when we're successful can we truly shut them up and show them who the real clowns are. I was hungry for success, but Lila didn't share my ambition. She was a pessimist at heart. In her diary, she wrote that she could see her entire future stretching out before her, dull, bleak, and suffocating. At first, I thought she was just being overly dramatic. But then I started hearing things at night, the sound of objects smashing against the walls of her apartment. And the next day at school, I would see the dark, ugly bruises peeking out from under the collar of her uniform. Her family wasn't just poor, it was violent. Then, one rainy night, I heard Julian's mocking laughter and Lila's strange, choked sobs. Ignoring my parents' protests, I pounded on our neighbor's door. The old door creaked open with a sound that sent shivers down my spine. Standing before me was Julian, a head taller than me. There was fresh blood on the corner of his mouth. His expression shifted from annoyance to a cruel, playful sneer. Well, if it isn't my sister's little puppy dog. What? You want in on the fun? Make it a threesome? I was old enough to understand exactly what he meant. A white-hot rage exploded in my chest, and I threw a punch. But I was no match for his size and strength. Within minutes, he had me pinned to the ground, beating me senseless. Even as he rained blows down on me, I stared him straight in the eye, oblivious to the pain. You're an animal, Julian. I spat. Rape is a crime. He just raised an eyebrow, his eyes filled with contempt. Sorry, kid. I'm still a minor. The police came and took us both away. In the end, our families signed a settlement. No money was exchanged, because both our families were dirt poor. My mother had suffered a serious illness years ago. Though only in her 50s, her body was as frail as an 80-year-old's. My father had lost a leg in a construction accident and was confined to a wheelchair. They sat at home, looking at my bruised face and sighing. Finally, my mother shuffled over and sat beside me, her hand trembling as she patted mine. I know you feel for that girl, son, she whispered. But our family, we can't take any more trouble. Tears streamed down my face. It was as if a bucket of ice-cold water had been dumped on the fire in my soul. She was right. I had my parents to think about. I couldn't just follow my righteous anger and demand justice for Lila. For the first time in my life, I felt the crippling weight of my own powerlessness. I couldn't even protect the girl I cared about. Night after night, I dreamed of being powerful, of bringing monsters like Julian to justice. But when I woke up, nothing had changed. I was trapped in a cage of helplessness, and I didn't know how to break free. I don't even know what I was thinking back then. A mix of guilt over Lila and despair about my own life made me acutely aware of my limitations. To escape it all, I buried myself in my studies, giving up everything else. After school, I no longer waited for Lila. I stayed behind in the empty classroom, studying until night fell and the security guard came to kick me out. When I left the school gates, I would often see her, a small silhouette waiting in the shade of a tree. But every time, the image of my aging parents would flash in my mind, and I would harden my heart, walking past without so much as a glance. She never approached me either, just followed silently a few paces behind. The other students noticed. The rumor mill started churning. Haha, the pauper dumped the little mute. Seriously? Who does he think he is? Too good for a mute. Poor little mute girl. I ignored their gossip. Until one day, she wasn't there after school. A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. I turned and ran back to the school. I searched classroom after classroom, finally hearing weak, desperate knocking and muffled sobs coming from inside the boys' restroom. That night, I saw her at her most broken. She tried to tell me something in sign language, but I didn't understand. She took off her school jacket and used a pen to write on the lining. First, she wrote, "Thank you." Then she asked why I was avoiding her. Maybe it was pride, or maybe I didn't want her to know how trapped I felt. I didn't answer. Her tears fell faster then, and in the middle of that downpour, I learned her story. Lila was not Julian's biological sister. She was their father's illegitimate daughter. When Julian's mother found out, she divorced him. Lila's birth mother took a payout and left. Now, the only people in that house were her gambling-addicted father, Julian, and her. And not long ago, her father had been beaten to death by loan sharks. Julian was now her legal guardian. She couldn't escape, and he would never let her go. From the first time I saw Julian, I knew the way he looked at Lila wasn't normal. It was a possessive, almost pathological obsession. But back then, I was blind and arrogant. I made Lila a promise. I will get into a good university, and then I'll come back and take you away from here. She looked at me through her tears and nodded, writing one more sentence. I'll go with you. We'll get out together. In our final year of high school, both of my parents passed away. It was Lila who stayed by my side through that dark and agonizing time. She kept writing, "I'll be with you. You still have me." I thought things were finally looking up. The national college entrance exams were upon us, the gateway to our future. But then, the unexpected happened. On the eve of the exams, the school was closed for preparations. That evening, the sun was setting and a cool breeze was blowing. Lila and I stood at our respective doors, looking at each other. After a long moment of hesitation, I just grinned. Good luck on the exams. See you after. A faint blush colored her cheeks as she nodded and disappeared inside her home. I never imagined that would be the last time I saw her. The next time I heard her name, it was after the final exam. I walked out of the testing center, surrounded by the jubilant shouts of my classmates, finally free. I stood under a tree, waiting for Lila, just as she used to wait for me. But she never appeared, not even as dusk settled over the town. A classmate saw me and sneered. "Hey, pauper, what are you doing here?" I ignored him, my eyes fixed on the school gate. He swore under his breath and scoffed. "You're not waiting for the little mute, are you? Don't you know? She jumped off a building the first night of the exams." TSK. They said it was such a mess, you couldn't even recognize her face. So scary. Lila was gone. I never even got to say goodbye. Julian had her cremated, scattering her ashes in a flower bed as if she were nothing. I went home to an empty house, clutched my pillow, and wept. I kept thinking, if only I had noticed something sooner, could things have been different? But reality is cruel. There are no if-onlys. I got into the top university, just as I'd planned, with a full scholarship. I finally left that small town. But I had lost Lila forever. For 4 years of university, I didn't date. I had no interest in getting to know other girls. I poured all my energy into my studies and worked multiple part-time jobs. After graduating, I started my own business. It was a success. I returned to my hometown and set up my company. That's when I met Rose. It was another rainy night. She was crying by herself on the side of the road. Her sobs were strange, choked sounds. But to my ears, they sounded like beautiful music. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming, that Lila was still by my side. But when I saw Rose's face, so different from Lila's, reality came crashing back. Lila was gone. Still, seeing Rose's tear-streaked face, and the way she couldn't speak, only using sign language to communicate, stirred something in me. Pity. I took her home. It was a rundown building, rebuilt on the same lot where Lila and I used to live. She stood on the stairs and waved to me, signing, "Thank you." Maybe it was the heavy rain, but for a split second, I saw Lila standing there instead. After that, Rose began asking me out frequently. I knew what she wanted. I admit, the thought crossed my mind. If I can't forget Lila, maybe a substitute would help. But my own moral code made me reject Rose's advances. I didn't expect her to be so persistent. Then, I was hospitalized after an accident. When Rose heard, she rushed to my side, staying by my hospital bed day and night. I thought to myself then, maybe Rose is a good person. Maybe I couldn't give her all of my love, but I could make it up to her in other ways. As if she could read my mind, Rose looked at me earnestly that night and sighed. I know there's someone else in your heart, but it's okay, because you're in mine. And just like that, we were together. We married quickly and began our life. I thought the rest of my days would be this quiet and peaceful. I never imagined it was all just an elaborate lie. Rose left without another word, the door slamming shut behind her. I stared at the mess she'd made, and bone-deep weariness settling over me. Maybe I had been on the wrong path from the start, destined to walk it alone. As I sat there, Rose's last words echoed in my mind. "You're the one who killed Lila." A sour taste filled my mouth. I pulled out my phone and sent a message to Julian. "I need to know the truth. What do you want?" His reply was almost instantaneous. "A little late to be asking now, isn't it, bro?" "Too late." I tried again. "How much money to tell me?" But the line went dead. There was no response. I lay on my bed, feeling drained, as if I was back on that rainy night all those years ago. The next morning, I saw a new message from Julian. "I want everything you have." He was insane. I cursed under my breath, didn't bother replying, and simply blocked his number. Downstairs, the housekeeper had already cleaned the house spotless. I drove to the office. After instructing my lawyer to proceed with the divorce, I threw myself into my work. Halfway through a meeting, my assistant burst into the office, his face pale with panic. I ended the meeting immediately. He handed me his phone. Several trending hashtags burned on the screen. Hashtag So Ethan Cheats. Hashtag Billionaire Ethan Master Seducer. I frowned and tapped on the links. My screen was flooded with over 99 screenshots of a chat history. The profile picture was mine. The person on the other side was a woman I didn't recognize. The conversation was sickeningly flirtatious, but it was clearly framed to look like I was the pursuer, sending a barrage of cheesy lines. "I haven't been able to sleep for days. You know why? I'm thinking of you every night." Her reply: "Watch out for lightning. I want to see you right now. If you say no, nothing will taste good. Everything's better when you're here." Her reply: "You're too greasy for me." It made no sense. I tossed the phone back to my assistant. "Slander. File a police report. This isn't me." My assistant took the phone, swiped a few more times, and then held it back out to me. "Sir, I checked the IP addresses. The screenshots were all taken from your phone. The IP of the account matches yours." I froze. I scrolled through my contact list and found the woman's profile picture. But when I opened our chat, it was completely empty. I understood immediately. The screenshots were taken and sent, then the messages were deleted. The dates were faked. This was Rose's plan to ruin me, using my own phone to flirt with some woman, then sending the evidence to herself. Did she really think a few screenshots could destroy me? I let out a cold laugh. Just as I was about to close the app, a new notification popped up. Hashtag social media influencer confirms So Ethan S advances. The video showed a woman with red, swollen eyes, as if she'd been crying for hours. But the words coming out of her mouth were pure fiction. She claimed I tried to pressure her for sex, that I called and harassed her every night, that I even tried to break into her house. She attached a few blurry surveillance stills showing a man's silhouette trying to force open a door. In an instant, the tide of public opinion turned against me. Things were escalating faster than I had anticipated. Rose quickly made her legal filings public. She gave a tearful press conference, accusing me of infidelity, of trying to leave her with nothing. She claimed I had abused her for years, forcing her to play the part of a mute. She said I forbade her from speaking for 3 whole years, hitting her and making her kneel for an hour if she even made a sound. These baseless accusations were like gasoline on a fire, igniting the public's rage. My reputation was in tatters. In just 2 days, my company's official social media accounts lost nearly 1 million followers. Protesters gathered outside my office building, throwing rotten eggs and holding signs that wished for my damnation. My business rivals seized the opportunity, swooping in to poach clients and steal contracts that were all but signed. The company's stock plummeted. We were on the brink of bankruptcy. I never realized the power of the internet could be so destructive, or that people could be so easily swayed. My assistant was pacing like a caged animal, but I had become unnervingly calm. A call came through on a new, unlisted number. The voice was digitally altered, but the smug, triumphant tone was unmistakably Rose's. How does it feel? Regret trying to divorce me now? If you get on your knees and beg me to take you back, I might consider it. I was silent for a moment. Then I asked a question. So, what's the real story behind Lila's death? Rose seemed taken aback that I would still care about that, even in my current predicament. Her voice was laced with impatience, but also a cold amusement. You're about to lose everything, and you're still worried about that? Fine. You want to know? Give me your company, and I'll tell you. A small smile touched my lips. Okay, I agreed. Rose was still in a state of shock when I handed over the signed documents transferring ownership of the company to her. I gave her a little wave. Can you tell me the truth now? Overjoyed, Rose read the contract over and over, making sure it was real. Satisfied, she pulled a signed divorce agreement from her purse and tossed it on the table. I'm the boss now. Sign this, and we're even. I smiled and signed my name. After my lawyer notarized it, Rose finally relaxed. Seeing that I was still waiting, she spoke slowly. I was a high school classmate of Julian's. He told me everything. He said that on the night of the exam, he raped Lila. It was her first time. The words made every hair on my body stand on end. My heart hammered against my ribs. He said that when Lila woke up, she was hysterical, screaming that she was going to the police. Julian told her that if she did, you would find out, and that you would never want a girl who wasn't clean. She couldn't handle the shame, and she was terrified of you finding out. That's why she killed herself. Her brief account was drenched in the agony of Lila's last moments. But Rose's tone was completely detached, almost dismissive of Lila's death. The rage that had been simmering inside me finally boiled over. I forced myself to remain calm, to look at her as if nothing was wrong. And you? I asked. Why did you marry me? She stared at me, genuinely surprised by the question. After a moment, she laughed. For the money, of course. All I had to do was pretend to be a mute for 3 years to get all this. Why wouldn't I do it? Julian said you were hopelessly in love with Lila. After she died, you would obviously need a replacement. I might not be as pretty as her, but it didn't matter. I just had to be a mute. I looked at this despicable woman, gloating in her victory, and the fire in my gut was suddenly extinguished, replaced by ice. I gave her a knowing smile. Julian told you to say all that, didn't he? The truth is, Lila didn't jump. Julian killed her. He pushed her, didn't he? As the words left my mouth, all the color drained from Rose's face. Just as the police burst through the door, Rose was still frozen in shock. How did you know? She stammered. How did you find out Julian killed her? Did he tell you? I shook my head slowly, then pointed first to the police officers, and then to my own ear. I had my suspicions before, I said. But now, I have no doubt. Rose bit her lip so hard it nearly drew blood, her eyes shooting daggers at me. On what grounds are you arresting me? She shrieked. I chuckled softly, bent down, and picked up the contract that had been dropped in the commotion. I handed it to her with a smile. Because you're the legal representative of the company, I said. Rose was sentenced to prison for massive tax evasion. She brought it all on herself. My company had always been clean, but her reckless schemes had attracted the attention of every jealous competitor I had. They began digging, using every dirty trick in the book. When my assistant wanted to fight back, I stopped him. It was fine. I could let the company go, because I had the means to start over from scratch. What I wanted was to see Julian and Rose pay for what they did. Julian was arrested a week later. Faced with a murder charge, he confessed everything. Only after they were both sentenced did the firestorm on the internet finally die down. When the whole truth came out, netizens flocked to my personal blog to apologize, saying they had wronged me. But it didn't matter. Without their outrage, things wouldn't have gone so smoothly. Lila was, indeed, murdered by Julian. I had already gathered some evidence before I confronted Rose, but it wasn't enough for a conviction. Her panicked confession was the final piece of the puzzle. On the night of the exam, Julian pushed Lila from the roof of their apartment building. He did it because he found out she was planning to leave with me after the exams. As I'd always known, Julian's feelings for her were a twisted mix of possession and control. Lila's desire for her own life, a life with me, was something he could not tolerate. The man who had tasted power over his non-biological sister would never allow her to defy him. Rose was right about one thing. In a way, I was indirectly responsible for her death. But my only intention was to help her escape. Ultimately, the one who deserved to be punished was Julian. Before they were sent to prison, I visited both of them. Rose was gaunt and haggard. The moment she saw me, her face contorted with rage. You knew all along, didn't you? You were plotting against me from the start. I said nothing, just watched her unravel. She seemed to be losing her grip on reality, laughing one moment and crying the next. After a long while, she fixed her gaze on me. Ethan, did you ever love me? I shook my head, then nodded. I told you from the beginning that my heart belonged to someone else. You said you didn't mind. That's why we got together. At first, I thought you were a good person. I was prepared to give you everything except my love. But you shouldn't have used Lila. You shouldn't have listened to Julian. I sighed, turned, and left the room without looking back. As I walked away, I could still hear her strange, choked sobs. Maybe she had been pretending for so long. She had forgotten how to make a real sound. When I saw Julian, he was covered in a scruffy beard, with dark circles under his eyes. He had lost a lot of weight. The old, arrogant smirk was gone. He just stared at me with hollow, sunken eyes. If it wasn't for you, Lila wouldn't have died, he rasped, his voice like gravel. I smiled. You think you can pin all the blame on me and walk away clean? It was you. It was all you. If you hadn't come along, Lila would never have wanted to leave me. She wouldn't have been scared of me. She wouldn't have hated me. Without you, Lila and I would have been happy together. We would have had a whole brood of fat, happy kids by now. His logic was so twisted it was laughable. I looked at him coldly. Even without me, it would never have been possible for you and Lila. You were siblings. You shared a father. You're a monster. My insult made him laugh, a hollow, mirthless sound. He stared at me and laughed for a long time, laughed until tears streamed down his face. Do you know what Lila said before she died? He choked out. She said, she told me not to cause any trouble for you. You see, even at the very end, she was still thinking about you. And what about you? You bastard. You were never worthy of her love. His accusations were like hammer blows to my heart. I swallowed the metallic taste of blood in my throat and forced a calm smile. You're right. Even at the end, she was thinking of me. And what about you? I bet the last thought she had was how much she regretted ever meeting you. You're lower than an animal. I turned and walked away, ignoring his enraged screams. I didn't stop, didn't look back. It wasn't until I was outside the prison walls, a cool breeze on my face, that I felt the dampness on my cheeks. I hadn't even realized I was crying. I drove to the cemetery. Lila's headstone was covered in a thick layer of dust. The guilt in my heart spread like ripples in a pond. I took off my suit jacket and carefully wiped away the dust, then placed a bouquet of fresh flowers at the base. I looked at the photograph of the girl forever frozen at 18 and whispered, Lila, I'm so sorry. I love you. 3 years passed. My new company went public overseas, and in just 3 years, it landed me on the Forbes list of the world's top 10 billionaires. With my newfound fame, my past was dredged up by the media. But the internet sleuths of today were more resourceful than before. They unearthed a private microblog I had started right after high school. It was a chronicle of my grief, my longing for Lila, and my repentance. Every post was flooded with new comments. Dude, you're not just in the top 10 of Forbes. You're in the top 10 of devoted lovers. Keep living your life, man. Your angel is watching over you from heaven. I didn't reply. I set the account to private, for my eyes only. I didn't want the story of me and Lila to be fodder for strangers. I just wanted to remember her, alone and in peace. I put my phone on airplane mode as the plane took off. I watched the clouds drift by outside the window. A strong gust of wind reshaped a large cloud, twisting and turning it into different forms in a matter of seconds. And then, for a brief, breathtaking moment, the shapes came together. They formed the sign for I love you. I stared at the cloud, my heart aching, and mouthed the words back. I love you too, Lila. I never got to tell you in this life. I promise I'll make up for it in the next.